quite often sort of, learning or inspiration comes from other industries, from people that you typically wouldn't expect, right? If you surround yourself with sort of exactly like-minded people with the same backgrounds, the same, engineering degrees from the same universities and the same, company legacies, et cetera, you get a similar product.
In part one of our conversation with Stephen Bulfer, he told us about his efforts to modernize mortgage lending with his company, Streamloan. In part two of our conversation, he talks about how developing new technology isn't enough. People have to change their behaviors to adopt that technology, and his reasons for why he believes technology companies should be investing their key resources in how to inspire cultural change. Stephen, great to have you back. I'm wanting to now dig into how do you innovate? How do you overcome challenges? Because we all face challenges, and I'm sure you faced a few different challenges over your time. And I'd love to hear your insight of how you were able to overcome. So looking back from the beginning of whether it's this organization or your other four endeavors that you said that you built up, what's an example where you had a difficulty and then were able to overcome it that another entrepreneur can learn from?
So we could speak for probably hours on the topic. Selecting one is a challenge. I think I get inspiration for innovation from a number of different places. I think quite often sort of learning or inspiration comes from other industries, from people that you typically wouldn't expect, right? If you surround yourself with sort of exactly like-minded people with the same backgrounds, the same engineering degrees from the same universities and the same company legacies, et cetera, you get a similar product. And so I like to just broadly speaking, challenge my own thinking. So, sometimes that's, reading other material or meeting with people from radically different industries, whether it's, manufacturing or pharma or textile design or, radically different industry. Like, how are they tackling problems? How are they thinking about innovation? How do you move the ball forward and think about doing something differently? And, I guess just, in the spirit of kind of staying focused on sort of the mortgage world, I had the blessing and the curse of never being a loan officer, right? So I knew enough to be dangerous after doing more transactions, as a real estate investor, going through the consumer mortgage experience, refi and purchase and HELOCs and second and all this nonsense, that I knew enough about what the borrower experience should be and could envision through a lot of the consulting experience I had on the enterprise and what the enterprise user persona and view would be, that I could sort of imagine the world could be a different place, right? And so when you think about innovation, you have to be able to expand your mind. And a lot of times the reason industries or companies don't change is they just keep doing the same thing again and again and again and don't really believe that things can be different. Like, this is how we've always done it. We're going to just continue doing it. Like, we're making money, we're operating our business, so let's just keep going. And so a lot of the industry insiders sort of, have been doing that in mortgage, continuing to manufacture mortgages the way they have for the previous decades. And, we're getting to a point now, and we talked about this in a previous discussion, the average cost of processing a mortgage is, approaching $9,000. That's up 3 times from pre-subprime crisis, which is about $3,000. So, at some point, the duct tape and the Frankenstein monster that you try to create and cobbling a few things together, it doesn't work, right? You have to think about things differently. And, and innovation is truly taking a step back and looking at the problem with a fresh perspective.
What some of the challenges that you had to overcome to just get it launched that now on your 5th one, you kind of probably even already know subconsciously? If you can think back to when you didn't know, what would be one of those things to just get it launched and get it started?
So, again, taking sort of a page out of Eric Ries's, Lean Startup and Steve Blank. I had the fortune of studying with them during my MBA back in 2007, 2008. So yeah, it was definitely an eye-opening experience, and it kind of forced you to think about, tackling, problems and industries and customers in a different way, right? And running a company a different way. So when I think about, previous venture and something that we tried differently and it worked and we were able to sort of get through, it would be, my previous venture, IonGrid. It was a mobile collaboration and mobile security company. We sold into the US government, we sold into utilities, we sold into financial services and many other highly regulated industries. And we had a horizontal solution that could be applied to anything from a public utility to a university to a financial services company. And when you have a great technology and it's not vertically focused, sometimes go to market and the sales motion and the messaging and sort of the world around sales and marketing is challenging. It's like, how do you get the product to market, right? What story should you be telling? What is the value proposition? How much are you saving, or how much are you helping, industry grow in terms of revenue or a client grow? So we ended up, doing a number of rapid experiments on different sort of messaging and sales motions, and ultimately zoomed in on one industry, the storage industry. So I was EMC storage engineer in a previous life, and it was kind of watching, NetApp and EMC and Dell and, a number of these other kind of storage technologies. And the intuition was that they needed to unleash or offer access, a new protocol to the data. The data was really hard to get it to. It was like kind of these old, crummy big storage boxes, and you have to, do some kind of cryptic nonsense to get access to it. It wasn't friendly. With a laptop, you could kind of hack your way. With a phone, forget about it. You'd never get access to these. So the intuition was, okay, run a bunch of different experiments, figure out which industry. We looked at professional services, we looked at telecom, we looked at, a number of different sort of, go-to-market motions, but really thought something around storage was interesting. And lo and behold, we got a lot of interest, and we thought about data access protocols a little bit differently. So we thought about it through the lens of our mobile devices being a window into the data. And that was kind of a breakthrough, and went out and tested it. And sure enough, while we were going through this sort of industry kind of go-to-market experimentation, EMC announced that they bought a mobile company, one of our competitors. Okay, so that started to go down. We saw Citrix did something similar. We saw, a number of these organizations buying companies that looked exactly like us. So, we knew we were onto something. Ultimately it led to, to our company also getting acquired by another large data storage platform called NetApp. Yeah.
Now, looking forward for your own business, you've painted the picture on our last chat of where you're headed. What difficulties do you see you're going to have to overcome? What hurdles do you see you're going to have to overcome in order to realize that vision?
So I think, like many industries, we've come to a development place of technology where technology is usually not the limitation, right? So if you want to get to Mars, we have some of the technology to sort of make it happen, and will it work for people? Will the rockets blow up? Will they be able to come back, right? So there you need hardcore R&D. But for solving I'll call them the simple problems on Earth, mortgage, finance, CRM related things, supply chain, all these sort of Earth type problems that that are here. We have technology that'll do it. So it's more about, and specifically, our experience within the mortgage and real estate space. It's how do you affect and change consumer behavior, or user behavior. People don't change habits. It's really, really difficult to change, a bad habit that you've had. And that's been embedded, right? And if you don't have a culture of change, and a leadership and investment that goes along with it, like, guess what? People are going to just default back to how they've been doing things. And so, it doesn't matter how great our rocket ship is, or our peers or competitors, et cetera. Ultimately, if the industry doesn't adopt these, and it's not just signing up with us and paying us to use the product, like we love that. But it's, are they actually driving, more revenue or more converted leads? Are they getting things through the pipeline faster? Are they reducing that $8,800 cost per loan? Like, do the business metrics actually match, the story that we tell? And, if not, we have a lot of work to do. And guess what? That's not necessarily technology. Yeah, there's some usability stuff and some design things that we can do to help. And we've invested quite heavily in those areas to make it, really simple. But that's, that's it, is getting people to do things differently. And it's not easy.
Behavioral change and getting people to do things differently. That is the crux of, if you're trying to lead a revolution or a big disruption in something where people have been doing the same thing forever and ever, and probably applies to any other tech industry. To see that, to make that happen, what actionable or pragmatic things are you working on to help that behavioral change and mindset?
Sure. Yeah. So without giving away our secrets,
Yes.
to the castle, myself and my co-founder and CTO at Streamloan both have what I would say a unique perspective into the industry, right? We have deep industry experience within real estate and mortgage, deep technology experience, but we also have come from a technology DNA. Both of us, we met at Deloitte, long time back, and worked together. And what I learned there is that you can't truly transform industries with technology alone. It's sufficient, but it's necessary, but not sufficient. So it takes something else. It's the je ne sais quoi. Like, well, what is it? It's the change management and change leadership. And early on in my career, I was like the hardcore techie, and I'm like, that's fluffy stuff. The reality is that's the real stuff. Tech is pretty easy. It's the how do you invoke change, and what are all the incentives and the type of motivations to get people to do something differently, and then also sort of get excited about it, right? Like, not begrudgingly do their stuff, like, I got it, but really kind of treat it like flow, right? I think, Apple has done a fantastic job. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, my day doesn't start without my iPhone. And so it has to be so ingrained in your life and flow that it's natural, and it's hard.
The simple statement you say of a lot of tech founders have focused on, the tech, that's cool. The fluffy stuff, that doesn't matter. You reverse it, saying, no, the fluffy stuff, the people, how they feel, that's what matters.
Yeah. And I never thought I would say that, but I did today.
You just did. Awesome. So books, podcasts, audiobooks, are there any that you've been reading or favorites that you have enjoyed?
Yeah. So, I wish I had more time to just consume information. If I could be a full-time student, I absolutely would. Again, I think about sort of learning and just exposing myself to as much as I can from as many different sources is critical to to being a great leader and within our company, but also within the industry. So you may kind of laugh at some of these titles, but like, don't sweat the small stuff, right? I'm rereading that for like the third time, and it's all about keeping perspective, right? And we need that more today than ever. Books like Blink, right? Easy page turners, New York, Times bestsellers, etc. But that's all about intuition matters, right? And we talked earlier about how I had some intuition around where to take things, right? Whether that's here or at a previous company, it matters, right? And there's some great insights there. The Economist is just a page turner. Sometimes it can be pretty dry, but I love it, right? It's easy to kind of read and consume 3, 4, 5, 10-page article and then move on. It's just good information. It's well written. Books like The Lean Startup, I'm rereading that again. We had that as some reading material back in back in grad school, and I had the fortune to study with Steve Blank and spend some time with Eric Ries, and their work is fantastic, and there's so many insights and ways of just kind of rethinking what you're doing, and so going back to brass tacks. So that that's a great one. The Intelligent Investor by Mr. Graham. That one's awesome, right? We're going through a lot of turbulence in the market. Sometimes it's good to go back to the brass tacks. And I'm rereading an autographed copy by Warren Buffett. I had a chance to spend a day with him during grad school, 2007, which was just like this phenomenal, epic day. So this is one of his favorite books, and was a mentor of his in investing. So chewing on that one. And then Alan Greenspan, The Age of Turbulence, which is all around sort of 9/11 and these like big one-time events that, potentially reshape the world forever, going forward. So just starting to kind of, get back in and reread that and kind of go through the mindset and the thinking like, oh, shoot, the world it's changed, and it's hard for people to believe, like, with the coronavirus and, just, the horrible cases and deaths and infection and the world pressing pause, and, what's the impact to, global growth and GDP and all of that and lives, down to, people that, can't pay their rent because they're service workers. Like it's challenging, but it's good, again, just to have some perspective. So those are a few.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to end with this last question.
Sure.
Looking forward, what kind of tech innovations do you predict we'll see in the near future and in the long term? So 1 year, 2 years, and then 10 years.
Yeah. So, I like to move away from the buzzwords, but I've always found being on the perimeter and pushing the boundaries help define success, the early success, and then, breaking into new industries. And so, I was, I was doing big data before the term big data even, was invented, back in like 2000, right? I was doing, mobile security and bring your own device, on the very early days when devices were still kind of, being developed and new form factors were coming out. So things like RPA and artificial intelligence, machine learning, and some of these other, I'll call them buzzwords, but there's actually some real meat behind them, especially if you can invoke the change and figure out how to tie it back from a science experiment to actually making a difference, right, to one of your customers' businesses, which is really the big deal. So I think for the foreseeable future, data will continue to become a differentiator. And those organizations that know how to mine, collect, and use data, many of the big, common examples now, of course, the Amazon and Google and Facebook and such, that's sort of an archetype for every organization.
Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.